Today for our daily cancellation, we turn to a new study that reveals something that will surprise no one. The New York Post reports, quote, Gen Z employees are entitled, too easily offended, lazy, and generally unprepared for the workplace, according to their new bosses. The dismal assessment of workers born between 1996 and 2010 comes in a poll of 966 business leaders across the country taken last month by the online education magazine Intelligent.com. Survey found 75% of execs felt most of the recent college grads they hired were unsuccessful. 60% said at least some of them had to be fired. The supervisors, who ranged from C-suite execs and business owners to senior and human resource managers at companies with more than 10 employees, said that they'll refrain from hiring Gen Z workers in the coming year. Quote, with Gen Z, they've got a ton of access to information, a lot of different content, news sources, and influences, said Hugh Wynn, Chief Education and Career Development Advisor for Intelligent and a former Fortune 500 hiring manager. So when they go into a company that has more traditional norms, you get a situation where it doesn't always mesh. He told the Post about 17% of leaders believe Gen Z, who range in age from their teens to about 28, is often too difficult to manage, and 39% said they have poor communication skills. Jesson James, an international entrepreneur, business mentor, and speaker, said some Gen Zers struggle to articulate themselves, don't look you in the eye, and don't project their voices. They lack charisma and personality skills, he told the Post, adding, I don't feel that they are in tune with what it takes to impress others. Now, keep in mind, by the way, that many Zoomers, especially the younger half of that generation, have spent all day on their phones every day of their lives, practically since birth. Most of their communication and engagement with the outside world has been facilitated by the phone. So it's no wonder that they struggle to relate and engage in person. You don't need to have personality skills on your phone. You don't need to have a personality at all, really, when you're on social media. You're constructing, an image that is maybe bears no resemblance really to your real personality. So you cannot give your child a phone, invite them to spend every waking hour of their day staring at the phone, and then scratch your head and wonder why they grew into adults with no social skills or personalities. It's inevitable. We'll return to that point in a moment. Reading on, quote, James has seen what he calls snowflakeism, some Gen Zers crumbling under even a little pressure. It's almost like you have to walk on eggshells around them, being super sensitive when managing them in case you offend them, upset them, or push them too far, he said. Some 20-somethings have even brought a parent with them to job interviews for support. Corporate environments and office culture have relaxed in recent years, when noted, and are viewed differently between generations. But even with a more laid-back office environment, recent college grads don't dress professionally and don't use appropriate language for work, 19% of those surveyed said. About 20% of respondents said Gen Zers are often late to work. 15% said they frequently hand assignments in late. The younger generation is also more likely to use up their sick days than their older colleagues, recent studies have found. Side note on the sick day thing is this will be unpopular, especially with younger people, but you shouldn't be using sick days, okay? I've used sick days maybe twice in 7 years, and in both of those cases, because I lost my voice and I couldn't speak, you can't blame me for that. It's impossible to do a podcast when you can't speak. And even then, and anyone who has been watching the show for a while, you know this, I still came into the office and recorded a video with subtitles when I lost my voice, if you recall. But generally speaking, again, I know this is unpopular, but sick days are for children, okay? They're for kids in school who are trying to stay home so they don't have to take a test that day. Like, with rare exception, taking a sick day as an adult should be pretty embarrassing for you. Calling your boss and saying, sorry, I can't come in today, my tummy hurts, is humiliating. You need to be at work, okay? Adults don't have time to be sick. They don't have time for it. I was just having this conversation with my kids recently, actually, because I was kind of under the weather, and my kids were aware of that, and they said, well, so why are you going to work? I said, because I don't have time to be sick. Okay, I don't know, I can't be. I don't have time. But you are sick, yeah, but I don't have time for it. So it's like I'm operating as though I'm not. Finishing up the article, quote, but many bosses are trying to tame the immature hires, even mandating office etiquette training. 54% of the company leaders surveyed said they offer the training, and many mandate it for new hires, and a quarter of them specifically require it for Gen Z recruits. So the fundamental problem for Gen Zers in the workplace is that many of them, not all, but many, have never really been introduced to, and this is really what it comes down to, they've never been introduced to a concept called obligation, otherwise known as responsibilities or duties. Man, have you heard of Rose Sparks? This dual-action prescription merges the powerhouse ingredients found in generic Viagra and Cialis, sildenafil and tadalafil into one formidable treatment. But it's not merely about the ingredients in the medication, it's how you're taking it. That's why Rose Sparks are designed to dissolve under your tongue. That's huge because dissolvable treatment hits your bloodstream faster than old school pills. Rose Sparks keeps you present with your partner instead of waiting for a pill to work. Rose Sparks leverages the benefits of sublingual administration, meaning the tablet dissolves under your tongue. This method allows for fast absorption directly into your bloodstream, bypassing the digestive system. The result, quicker onset of action, reducing the wait time typically associated with traditional pills. Plus, tadalafil, the active ingredient in Cialis, lasts in the system for up to 36 hours. So when the mood is right, you'll be ready without another dose. To get $15 off your first order and find out if prescription Rose Sparks are right for you, connect with a provider at ro.co/Walsh. That's ro.co/Walsh for $15 off your first order. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Only available if prescribed after an online consultation with a provider. They are failing in the workplace because work is all about fulfilling your responsibilities, even if you don't want to or don't feel like it, even if it's stressful or difficult, even if it makes you feel bad, even if you're anxious about it, okay, even if you're feeling depressed, even if you're whatever, you still have to do your job. And being at whatever you do for a living, being at a job is to be in a place where the main thing, like, yes, your value in that place depends on whether or not you are performing the tasks that you're supposed to perform. And that doesn't mean that your value as a person, as a human being, is dependent on that, but your value in the job is entirely dependent on whether or not you're performing the tasks that you're supposed to perform. And that is the first and really only thing that matters. And that's the environment you're in when you're in the workplace, where it's always like, what have you done for me lately? What are you doing? That's what I care about. And that was always going to be an environment that's very difficult for a lot of people that were raised the way that the kids are raised today. Perhaps the number one skill required to be a functional adult, much less a successful one, is the ability to do things you don't want to do. And to not only do them, but do them well. This is a facet of adult life that is so basic, it's so fundamental that in previous generations, it didn't even need to be articulated, right? Nobody would have even needed to explain this to you. But these days we have multiple generations, not just Gen Z, this applies to many millennials as well, who really do struggle with even the concept that they should have to do things they don't want to do and fulfill obligations that are not fun to fulfill. For them, in their world, they should be able to get out of anything simply by saying, well, this makes me feel bad. The idea of forging ahead and doing what must be done in spite of how you feel is foreign to them. Successful adults know that you can't let feelings guide you. You have to act and do what you need to do, and the feelings will follow behind. You can't wait until you feel happy and then act. You act first, and eventually you'll find that you also feel happy. Happiness is a byproduct of a well-lived life. It is not the starting point. It's not the entryway. Unsuccessful and dysfunctional adults try to flip this around. They insist that they must feel happy first, and then they'll act. But you can't conjure happiness out of the ether like that. You can't sit around waiting to feel it. The more you sit around waiting, the more your life falls apart around you, and the more unhappy you are as a result of that. So it's a vicious cycle that never ends. Many people in Gen Z struggle with this concept, but that's not entirely their own fault. It's the job of parents to convey this message to their children. My own kids struggle with this, as all kids do. And so sometimes, every parent has heard this. I'll tell my kids to do something, clean your room, do the dishes, whatever. And sometimes you'll get the response, oh, but I don't want to. And for a child, this is a logical rebuttal, right? They don't want to complete a certain task, and therefore they shouldn't have to. This is how their mind works. And I was just having this conversation with my 4-year-old recently. And I told her to clean up her room. And this was her answer. Well, I don't want to. And I'm explaining to her, well, you don't want to, but you're still going to, okay? You need to, even if you don't want to. And as I'm talking to her, I can see in her face that she really is, she's struggling to understand that concept. She doesn't quite understand. It's actually a disconnect here because she's 4. And so for her, it's like, well, wait a second, but I don't want it. What do you mean I should do? But I don't want to. Why should I have to do a thing I don't want to do? And and this is one of the great struggles as a parent, is to get this message across to your kids. It's up to me as the parent to help them understand that just because they don't want to do it doesn't mean they don't have to do it. Nobody wants to clean their room, yet the room needs to be cleaned, right? So we're at an impasse. What must be done and what you want to do are not aligned, and whenever that happens, the former must win out. And it's my job as a parent to teach my children this. If you don't teach your children, they will grow into adults who have the mentality of children. They won't make it in the workforce. They won't make it in life generally. And many older people did not instill these life lessons in their kids, and now they sit around complaining about the generation that they failed to properly raise. That's what it really comes down to. And that is why these Gen Zers in the workforce and their parents are all today canceled. If you'd like to see what else I have to say, you can access my full show by going to dailywire.com or by going to the Matt Walsh Show Twitter page. Hope to see you there. Godspeed.